everyone, my name is Ashley Conway. I'm the Academy Coach at J-Town High School. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Advisory Council meetings. As we know, Advisory Council meetings are required by the state, so that is part of the reason why we do this, but it's not the true reason behind what we do. Advisory Council meetings are expected to take place twice a year, so we hold one in the fall and one in the spring, and it's my understanding that we will continue to do this virtually. So the first thing I do is I meet with my teachers, and we pick out a date, and we look at our advisory list. So I keep a running list of all of our advisory council members by academy. I found that this is helpful just in case somebody were to move on. So we have not gone through this list yet this year because we're just now gearing up for our first invitation. But what we do is I just email this to all of my teachers and I say, hey, are there any companies or post-secondary institutions that we need to remove or add, just to make sure that I send this out to the correct group. So from there, and we talk about it, and my teachers will add or remove anyone that we need to do at that time. They are in charge of ensuring that we have both a parent and a student present, because at the end of the day, my teachers know their kids. And so I really want to make sure that they invite students and that we have students present who really feel like they own their program and are very active in the program, and students who want to be involved. So my teachers do a phenomenal job making sure that we always have that student and parent representation. I then create an invitation that I send to our business partners. So I handle the business partner end of the communication for invitations, and my teachers handle that same communication for parents and students. I email this out to everyone, just providing an overview of the pathways we'll be discussing, what the purpose behind our conversation will be, and our date and location. On the day of the meeting, I ask our students to greet all of our community members at the door and escort them back to the room where we will be meeting. And I have them do the same thing for parents. And I also ask that they man our table where we have everyone sign in. You'll notice I also have an RSVP on here. It's very important for me to know who's coming, because what I do is I type in all of the names and companies for everyone attending in advance with that contact information, so that we don't spend a lot of time having to fill that out. You'll see that some people may not RSVP and they just write their information in, and that is no problem at all. But I found that doing this in advance does cut down traffic a little bit at that sign-in table, and it helps you get to your meeting much quicker. Another reason I like people to RSVP is I actually set up like little table tents so that with everyone's names on them, so that everyone kind of knows who they're talking to. For my students, I also include what pathway they're in, so that our business partners know what program those students are studying. Keep in mind, you are required to have a parent and a student, a post-secondary partner, a business partner, and then we also have to have an administrator present with our teachers. So I invite our administrators that are over that academy. I know if you're not in academy school, it might look a little differently. This is also the invitation. Just make a note that the invitation should come from one of your partners who sits on the advisory council. That is the request from KDE. Unfortunately, at my school, we just don't have that right now. But we want to make sure that these meetings are still happening. From there, I organize our space appropriately. I always make sure that we're facing one another and that we have enough seats for everyone in advance, so that when people walk in the room, we're ready to go. We do typically have snacks and drinks of some sort that we all just kind of come in together. We all chip in and then I'll go pick up, but that is also not a requirement. During the meeting, well, I guess beforehand, I also create our agenda. You'll notice that this agenda does not look like the one that comes from the Office of Transition Readiness. I found that agenda that I actually go and type our minutes into just becomes a little overwhelming for our stakeholders to look at. And sometimes we get a little distracted making sure we're checking the boxes. So I've taken all that information and put it here on one of our blank agendas that I print out in advance and have waiting on the table for everyone. I also print out our labor market data sheet that I'll show you here in a moment. So anything that we're going to be reviewing, I have that printed out in advance and just kind of set the table for everyone before we get there. So we start off our meeting with our welcome and introductions, just roundtable style, nothing very fancy there. Then we always look at labor market data that I use from, I use a resource from Kentuckiana Works that I'll show you. And I always just ask if this is what we are seeing in the field. Is it accurate? Is there something on here that maybe is missing and that we should be paying attention to? So you can find these on Kentuckiana Works website, and they are organized by business sector. So I just use the one that is appropriate for the group that I'm meeting with during that time. During the meeting from there, I talk about what's going on in the school, but really I don't talk a whole lot during these meetings. My teachers and students really lead from there, and a lot of times just really great organic conversations start to happen. I have found that it's easier in the beginning to get your students to talk if you invite them to talk. So I try to be very intentional in asking questions to both parents and students very early in the meeting to try to pull that out of them so that they feel more comfortable, and then from there they just continue to share. I always provide an update on the academies, where we are implementing the academy model, but also where we are with any dual credit offerings, with our CTSOs by academy. So for Build and Design, we use Skills USA. My business pathways use FBLA, and my health science pathways are HOSA CTSOs. And then we talk about industry certification schedules, what certs we're offering for that year, and when we will be offering them. And for this particular academy, we do breakout sessions based on business sector. So this academy is made up of a conglomerate of manufacturing pathways, and we have found that it's best to then break out so that they can talk about more specific items. But that does not necessarily happen with every advisory council meeting that I have. So keep in mind that that's not a necessity. I always make it a point to also discuss any changes that have happened in our academy, including any new business partners or new teachers. And we also always discuss any work-based learning opportunities that students might have. We talk about the standards that are being covered at the time and if there's been any changes in curriculum. And then if you do have a new physical space that you want to show your advisory council, this is a great time to do so. So we were really excited to have a brand new health science lab that we opened in the 1920 school year. So we made it a point to show that space off. If you're in manufacturing, we show any new equipment that we have, all of those sorts of things as well, just so that our council is aware that we are keeping up with those things. So during the meeting, I actually take physical notes, old school style. I do not type in a computer. I know that that has been a recommendation in the past to just type your meeting minutes directly into the form while the meeting is happening. I tried that. I got feedback from my stakeholders and from my council members that it was distracting. And so I keep it pen and paper and just take notes where they fit on this. And then once I am finished, obviously I upload all of those things into whatever database we're using at the district level. So this is my meeting from last fall. That's the most recent one that we've had. So here's my attendance log and I don't know if we're still doing this online member sign-in link, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. From there, I just take what we did and I plop it in where it fits. And this goals part is a place that I didn't show on my previous agenda, but that is a place that is where we spend a lot of our discussion. This year, I'm also going to include next steps with timelines for our next steps, so that, because a lot of times we have these great conversations and then life happens and we get busy. So I think that that next step and follow-up is very important. So I upload this information as quickly as I can into the district's database. And then following our advisory council meeting, I also send a thank you email to parents, students, and business partners, thanking them for attending our meeting and recapping what we discussed. And I actually recap that in this version of my agenda template, only because that's the one that they had seen and that they were familiar with. So I actually go in and I type all of our notes up in another color, and then I send that out as a thank you. And I will now include next steps at the bottom. And we also go ahead and set our next meeting date. So you'll see that we were supposed to meet March 18th at 3 p.m. Did not happen due to COVID-19, but around that time, I actually reached out to all of our members all of our advisory council members and all of our advisory councils and set some tentative dates for this fall, depending on what we were going to be able to do. So the main thing is to make sure that you have your sign-in sheet, that you have your agenda, you take your minutes, make sure you have parent, student, teacher, administrator, and community member, business partner representation. And I think a best practice is absolutely to send some next steps out so that you can continue to move your work forward. Advisory councils, I found when you make them less about checking the boxes and more about driving your program forward, they become incredibly important. I'm very thankful to have great advisory council members in my building and outside of my building. I feel like that has truly changed the ownership in our academies, and that student voice is key. So I hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions at all or want any of these resources, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.